Hey guys, so I finally got my copy of Resident Evil 7 and I'm pretty excited to play. Yeah, I know, couple years behind, but typically I don't really like first-person horror games, so we'll see if this one can change my mind.
What?
Hey, wait a minute. Today's topic is the Resident Evil franchise's first foray into the first-person shooter style of game, Resident Evil
Survivor.
Or Gun Survivor if you're of the Nipponese persuasion. Survivor was unleashed, like the T-virus, onto unsuspecting citizens everywhere in Japan on January 27th of 2000, Europe on March 31st, and finally in North America on August 30th. Survivor was a PlayStation 1 exclusive till it later got ported to the PC 2 years later. Aside from setting itself apart from the franchise of being the first ever first-person shooter, Survivor was also different from previous Resident Evil titles because it wasn't developed by Capcom, but Tosei. At a glance, Survivor seems to be meant as a light gun game, but it functions with a controller instead. Truth be told, I didn't even know the PlayStation 1 had a light gun attachment, let alone games that actually supported it. I guess Point Blank wouldn't make much sense without a light gun support though, so what am I thinking about? But apparently I'm not as foolish as I thought for not knowing this game had light gun support, since only the Japanese and European version had it intact come release. The US version had its light gun support compatibility cut entirely due to, you guessed it, Columbine. So us poor American bastards got the nerfed version of the game because of two malcontents and the rabid pearl clutching against video games that followed. Tale as old as time, really. Survivor drops you into the shoes of an amnesiac man who's just survived a helicopter crash at the start of the game. Strangely, there's also a man clinging onto the helicopter as well. Just something to note. You come into the game with nothing but a big iron on your hip, which the game asserts is the only thing you can trust. Hell yeah, I agree 100%. Can't trust anything but your cold steel and wits. From here on, you need to find out what the hell's going on, where the hell you are, and what's the fastest way to get the hell out of here. You run across the body of the man who was dangling from your helicopter. Said body is clutching onto some dog tags that have the name Ark Thompson embossed upon them. You somehow come to the conclusion that that might be you for some reason, but your investigation is cut short by a zombie attacking you, and thus the nightmare truly begins. Having my ability to use a light gun completely removed means I have to use the PlayStation controller instead. You run around with the D-pad, open your inventory with square. To do violence, you hold down the R1 button and fire by mashing X. How well does that work though? Not very. Oh, it's not god-awful, I guess. The crosshair isn't overly sensitive, but it is kind of difficult to draw accurate shots on your foes. Accuracy kind of matters in this game, though, is the real problem with that. Shots to the head of your target actually do more damage, or so saith the Resident Evil wiki at least. Like later Resident Evils too, accuracy is factored into your endgame grade as well, so if you want a higher grade, you can't go around missing shots too easily. Your pistols do have unlimited ammo, though, so you could just absolutely rip shots until whatever you're pointing at is dead, and unless the situation you're in is incredibly dire, you won't need to break out your higher caliber weapons, which actually do have ammo you need to pick up. Survivor features a handful of weaponry you can use. I said pistols earlier, since you actually have 4 available to you. Your default and 3 others you can find. Each have different stats too. Some have higher damage, for instance, while others have higher capacity for ammunition, meaning you can pick up whatever one you like and use that one. Available to you to use are also series staple weapons in the shotgun, a magnum, and a grenade gun, not launcher for some reason, which features explosive, incendiary, and acid rounds to use. And if you finish the game with an S rank, you'll unlock a rocket launcher with unlimited ammo. The rest of the weapons can be found scattered about the dreary landscape of Sheena Island, and outside the handguns, all can be acquired in one playthrough. The handguns are separated by the game's different routes. To Survivor's credit, it features multiple paths you can traverse, which also features some different cutscenes and characters you'll end up interacting with. This, thankfully, boosts the replayability you can get from Survivor, since it's actually a pretty short game, truth be told. This video was the first time I ever sat down and played Survivor for reference, so a completely blind first playthrough took me about 2 hours. That includes 2 deaths as well for reference. So realistically, you can squeeze 3 playthroughs of Survivor if you want to see everything it has to offer. Why you would want to do that to yourself, though, is another question. Also, I have to add here that you have to beat Survivor in one sitting. There are no save points. You cannot quit at any point unless you want to do the whole damn thing over again. So really, it's a blessing that it's that short. It's also a blessing because Resident Evil Survivor fucking sucks. Near the end of my playthrough, I was already so very sick of this game. I've been being nice so far, but now it's time to put on the angry reviewer hat for once. The gunplay in this game being so shit makes it incredibly frustrating to play, especially against smaller or quicker enemies. This game has like a quasi-lock-on of sorts if you manage to pop a shot into whatever target you're taking aim at, but good luck drawing a bead on a Cerberus or a Crow. I said it was bad on smaller enemies, but even certain big boys like hunters can be difficult to fire on since they jitter and jump all over the damn place. Thankfully though, there is one tried and true tactic you can use in this game that almost always works. If you simply do not consent to being attacked, your enemies cannot harm you. Sure, your enemies may grab you and force you to look at their ugly faces, but if you simply walk away, they can't hurt you. Ladies and gentlemen, the myth of consent. I jest, but also I don't. I know running away has always been a tactic in classic Resident Evil games, but it works even more so in this game. I don't even think most enemies can hit you if you're not facing them, so just haul ass when you can. It is possible to get stuck on certain enemies, but sometimes they'll be so impressed by your brass balls, they'll just be stunned and do nothing. Look at this spider. So afraid of my alpha level dominance, he just rears his soft underbelly to me. Running backwards in slightly awkward patterns, only standing and fighting when you have to, is also an incredibly effective tactic. Occasionally though, you will have to fight a boss type monster, since in those scenarios you'll be trapped in the room where you're fighting in with them and unable to leave till they're dead. If this is the case, just strafe circles backwards. You move at the same speed walking forwards, so you can just back up and shoot. Back up and shoot. The one exception to this is the time where you're in a long alleyway with a tyrant at the other end. I feel like this is supposed to be super tense and kind of a throwback to the first time you encounter Nemesis in Resident Evil 3, but you can just crank rounds into him until he dies. So spooky. Enemy-wise, things are pretty standard for a Resident Evil affair. Zombies, Cerberus, crows that scream like monkeys for some reason. Umbrella cleanup soldiers who I'm not entirely sure aren't monkeys, lickers, hunters, bugs, and plants too. But of course a Resident Evil game wouldn't be complete without a couple big bads, and this one has these tyrants which you encounter pretty frequently, which really they're not that intimidating outside their chariot tackle since they can be down with just some simple pistol fire. By the way, you're slow. Your pace is basically a very relaxed walk with no option for moving any faster. The originals had a run. This game does not. Oh yeah, just take a breezy walk. There's no monsters anywhere! Interacting with the world is also quite a bit strange. There are many items to deal with in this game, but dealing with them can be a pain for sure. There's no button to interact with stuff, items, or doors. You just have to smash your face into whatever you want to use, or pick up. Items, instead of just being glints on the map, are giant rotating objects, so at least they're hard to miss. Items are decently plentiful, but I did find blue herbs to be a bit scarce, though I guess venomous creatures aren't too common, so maybe they thought they didn't need that many. Since pistol ammunition is unlimited, you'll be able to hoard ammunition for your powerful weapons for boss use only. Graphically, I think Survivor looks okay. I mean, it's a PS1 game. I do think the dark, dreary environments of Sheena Island are sufficiently creepy and wouldn't be too out of place in a normal Resident Evil game. I also appreciate the posters that reference Capcom's other titles like Dino Crisis and Street Fighter. Level design-wise, I can't complain, truth be told. I never really faltered anywhere in Survivor, and it always felt like I was moving forwards in the right direction. I don't think I ever backtracked once, which is amazing. I think the music is okay too, none of it really stuck out in my opinion, but it never actively subtracted from the experience either. Though I think a lot of the times silence would have been the better option, or at least cutting the combat tracks after combat is finished. Story-wise though, Survivor feels super amateurish and, well, boring, I guess. I know, Resident Evil has never been Kubrick levels, obviously, but good B-movie stuff is still good B-movie stuff. Survivor's various documents and overall story just isn't that compelling. Just sum it all up, Survivor takes place on an Umbrella-controlled island, Sheena Island. Big plot of Sheena Island is to mass-produce tyrants for Umbrella's use. Unfortunately, tyrants need a lot of beta-hetero-non-serotonin to grow up healthy and strong, and to make sure they have an ample supply of this hormone, Umbrella begins trafficking children and young people from all over the globe to Sheena Island for these experiments. Who could run such evil experiments, though? Why, Vincent Goldman, a top-ranking Umbrella employee who is constantly described as evil, cold, and any other acronym for bad you can think of. As you progress through the game, you come across evidence that maybe you're this Vincent Goldman everybody hates and talks about. You come to this conclusion somewhat after running across the journal of Andy Holland, another character in this game. He's the sewer caretaker and enjoys taking photos of people, probably because he's a pervert. One of these photos is of you and is accompanied by a journal entry identifying you as Goldman. This thesis is supported by two children you meet later on in the game, Lot and Lily. Both of them flee in terror of you, with Lot even threatening to break your kneecaps at one point.
Put that down. I won't harm you. I promise.
You picked the wrong house, fool!
They realize you're not evil, though, and end up escaping the island with you. There's also a UBCS commando on the hunt for everybody on the island as well, but really, he's not that important. Thankfully, though, you do find out you're not this Vincent Golden, but Ark Thompson, like you first assumed.
That's right. At the request of my friend, Leon S. Kennedy, I came here to investigate.
Turns out you found out the truth about the island, and were on your way to leave and report your findings on the nefarious child-based experiments going on there. Goldman, realizing the lid was about to be blown off everything, unleashed the T-virus on the island in the hopes it would kill you. Unfortunately for him, you're a survivor. A Resident Evil survivor, if you will. Unfortunate for everybody else on the island, though. Cut to the endgame, and you're fighting through a tyrant factory and run across the big boss of the game, the Hypnos T-type tyrant, a vaguely humanoid tyrant made of jelly. Aping off of Resident Evil 2, you initiate the self-destruct sequence of the factory and labs and begin to haul your ass to a convenient helicopter, but you end up getting headed off. By who? Well, that depends. Here at the end, based on which route you took at the start of the game, Vincent, Andy, or the UT commander heads you off and threatens to blast you. And they die to the Hypnos. It's funny because if you didn't bother playing through Survivor multiple times, none of these characters would show up beyond their first appearances, except for the one that dies here. Anyway, you run to the helicopter, but the Hypnos follows you, and now it's time to fight. The Hypnos T-Tyrant does big damage, can close distances with a quick charge, and is all around a pretty fearsome foe. However, it's easily beaten by walking backwards in circles and shooting it. It'll mutate once, and you walk backwards in circles again to defeat it. It dies, you run to the helicopter with Lot and Lily. Ark flies off with Lot and Lily, but because this is a horror thing, the monster has to come back one final time. But Ark slags it like a professional, of course.
You're fired.
In a cutscene, though, you don't get to have any more fun. Ark flies off with Lot and Lily, reassuring the two kids that they can fly as long as they have fuel. Assumedly, they're still flying to this day, because we haven't heard shit about Ark or anyone from this game ever again. Resident Evil Survivor is not a good game. Understatement of the generation right there. It's overly slow, the shooting mechanics suck, it looks okay at best, and the story's just kinda eh. I feel like more interesting things could have been done with this title. Like, why are Lot and Lily just normal kids? Why couldn't they have been those experiment children or something? They're just two dumbass kids with no real involvement on the island. At least Sherry was related to William Birkin and had a purpose of being an RE2. These two, they're just random survivors. Well, actually, I take that back partially. Lily is a pointless survivor, that's for sure, but Lot's the one that tattled on you to Vincent, which kinda started this whole thing. So technically the events of this game are all Lot's fault. Good job, fucko. Also, even with the different routes available to you, I don't really think Survivor warrants that many playthroughs. Maybe if you're a masochist and enjoy boring games, or if you're a die-hard Resident Evil completionist that really wants to read all the documents. Otherwise, yeah, just skip this one. Especially because people are trying to sell it on eBay for $80 fucking dollars. This game isn't worth $1. I guess it is nice they gave a first-person style game another shot with 7, this time to far greater success, obviously. Survivor is definitely one of the most odd Resident Evil titles, though, one that's essentially the poochie of the franchise, something to be forgotten or written out of canon, and for good reason. Anyway, I'm HadesManticore, and this fair channel is CItyStateManticore. Thanks a ton if you watched. Feel free to leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.